subscribe, like, comment, and turn on the notification button so you are aware of our future episodes that you will love so much.
Let me introduce you to one of our many success stories from our scholarship cohort.
Your community must be so proud of you.
Lazola, Anele, Nanko Ayanta.
Hey guys.
So let's start off with the basics, but I'm sure you know them already.
Hello guys, welcome to the press release of Black Burns Fast, a wonderful feature film that we've just seen and witnessed, and which is something that I think audiences will be looking forward to. But before I go into it, I would allow you guys to please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Kate Pansacher and I'm the producer of Black Burns Fast.
Hi, my name is Sandulela Asanda and I am the director and screenwriter of Black Burns Fast.
Awesome, thank you so much. We've just seen this film, a very light-hearted film with quite an interesting topic and theme at the center of it. As a director and writer, I think my first question for you would be, what is it that inspired you to tell the story, and when did it all start, and what was the development process?
Yeah, so the development of it started in 2020. During COVID, actually. I saw that on social media, a lot of Black students and former students were just talking about their experiences in former Model C schools and former all-white schools, and I went to a private school as well. And what I could notice from people who went to school from the 80s up until now were all having the same experiences of micro and macroaggressions at high school level and primary, from both staff and from other students. And around the same time, I'd also was really coming into my sexuality and noticed that so I was thinking about that time and realized that there was just this silence around sexuality and specifically queerness as an identity of a way to be. And I started thinking if I had known that I was queer at that time, I think I would have been much happier and I would have known myself a lot better and been able just to navigate life much more easily. And I was like, why don't we have anything like that? And for me as a filmmaker, ever since I've started, I've always wanted to make the type of films that I needed when I was a kid and growing up. So this was definitely the first step in doing that.
As a producer, what was it when Sandu approached you that made you say, this is a story that I want to tell?
When we first had the conversation about what she wanted to do with the work, the way I connected with it was, I'm originally from KwaZulu-Natal. Most of my friends were Black, and at the time I didn't have the maturity or the lexicon necessarily to express the anger that I felt that my friends' hair was constantly policed. The volume at which they spoke was policed. They were not allowed to speak vernacular on campus. They were not allowed to practice their faith. It was a Christian-based school. And it made me really upset, but I didn't necessarily know what to do about it. This was a long time ago. I'm nearly 40, so it wasn't necessarily... I think the youth of today are so brave and dynamic, and I'm from also a very small town, so it just wasn't something that was done that you question the system. And so that was kind of my entry point into the story. But also the way Sandulela wanted to tell the story, the fact that it was so personal, and that she brings this freshness and innovation to her filmmaking was really exciting. And in our early conversations, we knew we had to make a short because she was a young filmmaker and we needed to build her track record, but we also needed something that I could use as a financial tool, a tangible financial tool when pitching for money for the feature. And very frustrating process, very long process. Unfortunately, you know, as much as we have an amazingly liberal constitution, that's not the lived experience for most queer people. There is enormous homophobia in our country, and so funding domestically particularly was difficult. And what clinched the deal with Amazon was the short. I mean, they loved our pitch, but when they saw the short, they were absolutely convinced that they wanted a feature version.
You know, you say a lot of queer cinema is around trauma, rejection, and I want to just find out from you, Sandulela, you know, these devices that you used. Kate used an interesting word, said innovation. You know, you were very innovative in the way you told the story, the way you described, or you could show the audience what was happening internally with these characters. How did you tap into that? And you know, some of these aesthetic devices that you used with video games and those graphics, where did they come from?
Even just doing research for this film, one distinct thing that I realized is like, it's very seldom that like a black girl is just at the forefront of this, but also that we're seeing her internal world. So for me, it was really important to externalize that, and the fastest way to do that was to also bring her imagination out. Another important thing was also to show just like her innocence and that she's still like a child and very sheltered. And so that's where kind of like the animation aspect came from, taken from animation and cartoons, and then gaming as well. But I'm also like I'm also a nerd, so gaming also.
That's where it comes from.
So like I'm a big fan of like Scott Pilgrim. That's a reference that a lot of people are able to pick up. And I think it helps in different ways also in this approach to like this journey of identity that Lutando's also on, as we see less and less of these visual effects as she grows into herself and is less in her head and more is interacting more with the world that she has. I think in terms of the visual approach, just in general, I just took from different places. And I think that's, I guess, part of queerness as well. Like you just take different things that you can read the subtleties in that align with you and you make them work for your identity. And so it's very much that. I took from like music videos by Michel Gondry, who does more like expressionist work in his films and his music videos. I looked at photography, games, films, just taking from different parts of just like what was available to me in media.
What did you want to emphasize on? I mean, knowing and understanding where the market is going right now, what was sort of like your vision as a producer to say this is what we're going to put out there?
For me, it's about the voice of the director and the writer, what they want to say, and then figuring out how do I make this work in the market? How do I create an audience around this? So the creative always informs that. And I think to Sandulela's point, in the earlier drafts, I mean, I really feel like you needed to purge. You needed to purge, you know, what you went through in high school. And so to borrow the word of shepherding, it was like, okay, we want this to be joyful. We want this to give, I mean, Sandulela calls this a love letter to her younger self, which I love.
It's beautiful.
And to create something that she wishes she had had access to as a teenager. And so I think it was really just about reminding ourselves of when people watch this, we want them to laugh, we want them to have fun, we want them to see themselves on screen, but in a way that is where they are supported and where they are celebrated for, where the characters are celebrated for who they are. And so that really became the driving force, and we were very fortunate to find the most incredible group of young women to play the ensemble cast who are very self-assured and who all brought so much of themselves to the role that, I don't know, on set it felt very natural. It was I'm known for making very dark, depressing films, and I will always make films like that. But but this was it was so much fun. And I mean, our assistant director, for example, who is I think close to 60 and been doing this for a really long time, came to me at Wrap and said this was the most safe, nurturing, fun set that she'd ever been on. And that was something that was incredibly important to us because we wanted these young women to feel safe, but also to feel safe to take chances and to make mistakes. And the crew was really on board with that. And Kathy, our assistant director, really steered the ship always with that in mind. And so, yeah, it was also the first time in my career that like the crew bought me presents after the shoot.
I must have really enjoyed it.
To say, this was so fun, this was so great. Like, why can't all sets be like this, you know? So as much as I'm proud of the film and everything it's achieved and what it will continue to achieve and what it means to Sandolela and I, that is something that I am incredibly proud of because I think we all know in the film industry it can be a very unsafe, very toxic space, and that's just never acceptable to me.
Wonderful. I want to just talk about your casting choices. You had a very strong blend, a good blend of experienced, performers with, a phenomenal comedy timing, and young, fresh, unknown names, but who came and brought their own. And how did you balance that? And what was the process, your casting process?
We sent out a brief to get casting tapes, but also along with that brief, I recorded a video of myself talking about like why I wanted to make this film in the first place and just coming from a place of vulnerability. And I think that helped in allowing the people who were auditioning to also be vulnerable themselves, because I didn't just want people who could do the role, but I also wanted people who I guess had skin in the game, in the sense that like they also connected with these characters. There is something that they viewed important in these characters. So we're all coming from at least the same level of commitment to this project as well. And then for some of them, it was like an automatic yes for me. So like Esihle, I saw her and I was like, that's the one, like we don't need callbacks, but she forced me to do callbacks anyway. And then in the callbacks, we had just like little chemistry tests just to see how they work together, the different like combinations. And that's how we came to this wonderful ensemble. And then even with the more experienced cast, again, it was about who was best. And we were lucky to have like people like Rob van Vuuren and Anton just like come forward and also like give themselves for the days that they could, and just like knock it out of the park with little work from me, but also happy to be directed by me as well. Because I think as a young director, sometimes you get a bit like nervous working with people who are a bit more experienced than you. And I did my best from my part, but it's also great having them allow me and give me that space to do that too.
Okay. How was the response, with some of these international festivals and the European market as opposed to here at home?
So Berlin, when we got into Berlin, it was incredibly exciting. One of the most important and oldest film festivals in the world. They get something like 10,000 submissions a year, So we were very excited, but personally, I don't even know if I shared this with you. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go with the German audience, because the humor is very South African. A lot of people don't understand our humor. And, the film is centered around Black women. So I went in very excited and optimistic, and I was absolutely amazed and so proud and emotional at the response we got. European audiences, unlike ours, are very quiet. So they're not as animated as we are necessarily, but there were a lot of laughs and standing ovation for 10 minutes afterwards, and people, young queer people, but equally an old woman came and spoke to us who was probably in her 70s, saying thank you, what an amazing experience, and I think people are so happy to see something delightful also coming from the African continent, and also something contemporary, because what the global North's idea of what African cinema should be can be quite archaic. I think that is changing by virtue, it's slow, but by virtue of there are actually programmers of color now working at festivals. There are festival directors of color. So that shift is happening. But yeah, people loved it, and it really moved them, which I wasn't really expecting to that degree, at least.
Now that you've made your first feature, how has your voice as a filmmaker changed, and what kind of stories are calling you next?
I'm a lot more confident in my voice, but it's tricky because I think doing a film like this, I had to be confident in the first place because there were a lot of naysayers in the process and development, in financing. People were saying, I'm not sure this resonates. We don't know if this audience of yours is really gonna go for it. But I feel like I really feel more confident in my abilities technically and being able to like run a set. So that's been really great. In terms of what stories are calling me, hey, I don't want to box myself in. I don't want to be boxed in. I definitely want to do a lot more work kind of like this, just focusing on young black girls, but just contemporary South Africa in general.
The amount of requests we have had for a sequel I've lost count.
And it's necessary. Hey, the way it ends.
So maybe a series, wink, wink to the streamers. But what's so fun is on our Letterboxd comments and reviews, multiple people from all over the world are like, we need a university version that's even messier. The girls are all, experimenting with different things. Wow. And so I just think it's a real credit to the world that was created and these amazing characters, and I would be totally down to do a series.
Yeah. What kind of conversations would you like them to have on the way back home and when they're all alone outside of this environment? What spark do you want to actually just kind of ignite within them?
I think I speak for both Kate and myself that we want people to feel seen and heard, to feel joy, definitely. And for me personally, I want people to also just give themselves more grace when it comes to self-actualizing and just growing into their identity. And no matter how old you are, even if you're 50, that's what I would really like.
Yeah, I think particularly for the black queer youth that we made this film for primarily, we want them to feel celebrated. We want them to feel like their lived experience is valid and feel hopeful. And I think one of the main aspects of the film that does this really well and that was very difficult for Sandulela to crack was the mother-daughter relationship. And this is also something that has come up, again, from audiences all over the world, that the nuance that relationship was dealt with, where the mom's not, the villain or the antagonist, is really important. And I hope that if parents go and watch the film with their kids or maybe without their kids, that they give their kids more grace and more support.
Well, ladies, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we hope that this film becomes a resounding success.
Thank you.
That South Africa will talk about for generations to come.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. And please make sure you watch Black Burns Fast in cinemas from 31st of July.
Nationwide.
Representation of mental health.
There you go.